Okay, folks, David Halpern of Mastery Consulting, talking about the all-important topic of business finances. Now, we've touched on this in previous videos. I've touched on this in seminars and events. This deserves a little bit more depth here. Why? Because what is the purpose of building a great big business if you don't understand how to manage finances, business and or personal? What's the point? I mean, I'm working with people that their progress has been terrific in terms of sales and profitability each year over a course of, in some cases, many years. And pardon this language, but if you don't figure out and understand finances, you still won't have a pot to piss in. I worry that sometimes all this efforts that I take working with people or walking alongside them on their business journey is sometimes in vain because they just make more and they just piss away more. Pardon my language, but that's what happens. And it's not that we have to be frugal, it's just that we have to understand how to manage a business. So what I want to share with you on this video, a little bit lengthier than normal, is what do I look for in a business? When I work privately with someone or at a high level, like in our board of directors, as you may have heard, what is required of people that work with me in this type of setting or format? What do I do for myself in my own business? Well, we start with a P&L. And I don't know how well you can see this, but you'll notice on this P&L for this particular company, it has every month's P&L lined up side by side, January through December. So let's start with what is a P&L? A P&L is a profit and loss statement. You might have heard of it as an income statement. And all it has is at the top of the P&L, I know this one's very complicated and cumbersome and has many, many categories. You'll see revenue categories, and then underneath you'll see the expense category. I'll show you another one that's easier for you guys to see here in just a moment from some private coaching clients. But basically, it's the ins and outs of your money. Now, the best way to do it for a business is, of course, everything that hits your bank account between, let's just say, January 1st and January 31st goes in the revenue categories. Everything that goes out during those days goes in the expense categories. If you charge something to a credit card, count it as an expense the day the card got charged, not the day you pay off the card, right? So in that way, you're looking at a snapshot of the ins and outs of your business. Now, that's not the ultimate scoreboard, which is the balance sheet we'll get to in a minute. But that is the income statement. It's kind of like the motion picture. It shows you that it's not the whole picture. In fact, there are clients that I work with that will go, Dave, look, I just got my P&L, and they'll be all excited or all nervous about it. They'll want to start firing people or whatever. Based on 1 month. You know, their bookkeeper gave them a P&L from 3 months ago or 2 months ago, a little bit late. They're looking at the P&L and making decisions based on 1 month. That's like going to a Marvel movie, showing up an hour late, leaving an hour early, and think you understand the whole story. A P&L, a profit and loss statement or income statement, is nothing more than the motion picture of what went on during that time period. Now, it doesn't make any sense for a business owner to use it except in the context of comparing it to all of the months side by side on a single sheet of paper, because when you do that, I don't care if you have no background in finance. When you do that, you can have an intelligent, a high-level business conversation just by looking at it with other people and going, why is this so high? Why is this so low? What's in here? Let's research it. What can we do to improve this? And by the way, those simple conversations are how extremely high-level business professionals operate their businesses and run their finances. So let me show you an example here. This is a married couple that I privately work with, right? And you'll notice, forget about the pipeline up top for a minute. We'll start with income. So there's their commissions from their business and some other incomes. Here's their expenses. You'll notice up at the top, it has January. Oh, I guess we have August, September, October, November, December, which were the months they did this in, right? And here are their income, and here's all their expenses. Now we have it's a little bit long at current because we have a lot of expense categories that go onto a second page. I like to get these down to 1 page if possible. Here's all the expenses. And then after that, you have something called net income, which is simply your revenues minus your expenses, right? So what's interesting is when you do that and have the months side by side, you can have a snapshot of what's going on. So this was a couple that was struggling with finances. One of my strong beliefs is that you struggle with finances more out of fear of finances than any reality because you don't have a freaking scoreboard. So everybody is sabotaging their businesses. We make horrible business decisions when we're stressing about money. Usually the right answer is, if you had all the money in the world, what business decision would you make? Typically, you'll get to a better answer than the decisions you're making now, which are in the heat of emotion when things are going wrong. You're making business decisions and spending or investment or decisions to cut your spending and investment. It's ridiculous, right? So now this couple had a tight financial situation. Okay, they had a transaction close in August. You can see that here. Nothing in September and October. A couple in November. But let's just start there. So the income statement shows your in and outs. Now, in the month where they had one transaction and all of their expenses, they still ended up with a profit with just a single transaction. They ended up with a profit of $2,000. Now, my question for them was, does that make sense? You only did one transaction and you still had extra money coming in. And they said, yes, it makes sense. In fact, our bank accounts increased by something like $2,000 that month. Wow, now we know a statistic or a piece of information we didn't know before, which is one transaction and they're better than even. I asked them, is that a typical month of expenses? And they said, for the most part, yes. Okay, so basically what you're saying is we only need one transaction a month in order to be whole. And they didn't realize this before. In fact, the prior year, they had done 23 transactions. They hired me to privately coach them because they're dying to get to 40. And I told them, I said, you realize with 12, you're in a good financial shape. 12, right? So now we go to the balance sheet. What's the balance sheet? The balance sheet is your assets and your liabilities. Again, lined up by month. I don't know if you can see this here. It could be bank accounts, investment accounts, the market value of your home. For example, you've got a home with a market value of $570,000, beautiful, liabilities, etc. Okay, liabilities are your, so let's talk about assets and liabilities. Assets are what you own. Liabilities are what you owe. It's that simple. Assets are the things you have, cash in the bank, money in investment accounts, stock, real estate and market value. Your liabilities are what you owe. It could be credit card debt, it could be the mortgage, balance on the house. By the way, when we did this, they had something like back in August, they were upside down $1,000 in cash in the bank accounts. Interesting, overdrawn. In liabilities, they had $5 or $6 grand. And we do track, by the way, for credit cards, what are the credit card limits as well, because we want to know if people are maxed out or not, because credit matters. And they were pretty well maxed out. But they had this $570,000 home and no mortgage payment on it. So I asked them, I said, where's the mortgage payment on it? Oh, it's paid off. It's paid off. Holy moly. So how'd that happen? Well, we bought a house in Pasadena with the help of our folks. It went up in equity value. We sold it, moved to a different area and bought a home for cash. Holy moly, how wonderful. These folks are like, I think the husband's 41, the wife's 32. I mean, wonderful. Wow. I wish I could wish that on everybody, right? And that's part of the reason why they only need one transaction a month to be flush, because they don't even have a mortgage payment. In fact, they're paying for rent for their mom. What a beautiful thing to do, right? That's part of this. So what I'm trying to get at is you're starting to see and understand the numbers when you do this exercise. Now, they were all stressy, but then what we did was we added their pipeline to the top of the sheet. So at the top of the P&L, strangely enough, we put the pipeline of transactions, the HOTS and the in action transactions, what's in escrow, whatever. It depends on the business you're in, of course. And they knew they had 3 transactions closing in November and 2 more in December. So even though their financial situation was, ominous, if you will, or kind of, challenging at the moment, the present time, they knew there were some transactions coming up, and now they understood if they're closing 3 transactions, they could have as much as $20,000, $15,000 in excess cash. Interesting? Now, one last thing. There on the bottom of the balance, now the balance sheet is the ultimate scoreboard. Your assets less your liabilities. You understand, to be a millionaire, it doesn't mean you're making $1 million. That means nothing. Most people that make $1 million spend it, piss it away, right? To be a millionaire means you have $1 million in net assets, as most of the people I work with know, right? Assets less liabilities is still $1 million or more, right? So for them, I mean, they're well on their way there because of the paid off home. How beautiful is that? So they have a great looking scoreboard. Now, for those of you that are like, I don't want to look at this, my scoreboard's awful, I'm here to encourage you by telling you, when I was 40 years old, we had a challenging and largely negative net worth. And this is a guy that has a resume that looks all cute, right? Yale, Phi Beta Kappa, top 5% of my graduating class, summa cum laude, went to work for an investment bank that acquired the 3rd largest jewelry chain in the world, Crescent Jewelers, became the CEO of Crescent, CEO of database marketing company. And here I am at age 40, completely upside down financially with a wife and daughter, which is proof that education doesn't teach you what to do with money at all. Interesting? You know what changed everything? What changed everything was beginning to look as a family at our spending, at our investing, at our balance sheet. Everything changes when you pay. It's amazing. It's like metrics, right? What you measure gets better. The more frequently you measure it, the better it gets. The number one greatest thing I can wish upon anybody I privately coach is to prepare and review this on a monthly basis. This is the ultimate scoreboard. Your business may not even grow in a tremendously robust fashion, but your financial situation might, simply because you're paying attention to it. Interesting? Let me show you something about the pipeline that startled me when I was working with this married couple. So here they are understanding that they're going to have excess cash coming in a little bit, right? So what we did was something called use of proceeds. This is crucial. The use of proceeds we put at the bottom, and it's basically as extra money comes in, what are you going to do with that capital? And you decide upon it in advance. In other words, there are no decisions to be made in the next few months. They decided the first thing they wanted was to have 10K cash in the bank, always minimum. That was their peace of mind. The second thing they decided they wanted to do was to reinvest in the business, in marketing channels, with certain dollar amounts already predetermined, right? Third thing, they want to pay off the debt, which was 5 or 6K, right? Then they wanted to get a HELOC against their home in order to have credit so they could go buy one investment property by the end of the coming year. In these months, we put in exactly what they're going to put towards each category. In other words, 4 months in advance-ish, they already decided what to do with extra money as extra money comes in. Interesting? Do you understand how that can change a life? Particularly if, for those of you that are in, marriages or relationships, or even if you're not, and you have someone who's your confidant that you confide in, to make investing and spending decisions together can be a powerful thing. I am not a fan of just willy-nilly paying down debt the moment you get extra cash. I'm not a fan of it. Why? Because what if you have no cash left over after you pay down the debt? Then how do you take care of your family? So what I care about is that I don't really care what your use of proceeds are. I care that you decide what they are, that you're intentional, that this reflects your decision making in your life, and it should be different for every single person that I work with. Does that make sense? Now, here's the punchline. Are you ready? There is a kind of different energy that comes around when you're on top of your financials. Watch this. So I get together with this married couple, and here we are looking at their pipeline in August in a private coaching session, and suddenly their number of hot leads, I don't know if you can see this, went from 4 to 17 in 1 month. And by the way, they also put more transactions in their pipeline simultaneously, 4 to 17. I said, what the heck is that? And this is what they said. After a couple of minutes, the wife broke down in tears, sharing with me that they never really had a grip on financials before in their lives. In fact, just reviewing this and understanding what's coming gave them so much peace, right? And gave them so much encouragement about what's going to happen in the future that they just feel more relaxed. They feel like a cloud was removed, and now they're just working their business, with aggression, if that makes sense, with energy and expectation. I said, so what else has changed in your business? Nothing. We just have been going on appointments like crazy because we feel good about I couldn't help but think this is an awful thing to say, but their financial situation still sucked at that time. Do you understand that nothing had changed yet, but their clarity, their optics, their metrics, their visibility on their finances gave them a kind of peace and energy to go build their business. Sometimes the problem's not your finances, it's your fear of the finances. Now, I know this was a bit short. We have these templates for you, by the way, so you're welcome at any time to text us and ask for a copy of this template. You can call it the P&L template or the financials. I'd love to get this in the hands of everybody, to be honest with you. The people that privately work with us in board of directors, private coaching, are generally doing this because this is crucial, right? This is your scoreboard. My question for you today is, having seen what you just saw, what one action or decision might you make to improve your business and your personal finances on a go-forward basis?